Jareth Boone stood in a blindingly white corridor aboard the medical wing of the orbital station Hekarion VI, blinking against the sterile overhead lights. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, and something metallic, like copper and ozone, had gotten into a fight and decided to settle in his nostrils. He rubbed his temples, his head pounding with a dull throb that had started somewhere over the Atlantic during ascent and blossomed into a full-on migraine by the time orbit stabilized. The shuttle ride had been rough. Turbulence in low-gravity transitions always made him queasy, but the pressure behind his eyes now felt like a balloon trying to escape through his skull. "Please describe the nature and severity of your cranial trauma," a tall, blue-skinned alien asked, standing too close for comfort. Its long fingers tapped at a translucent tablet that hovered in the air beside it. The alien's name, Dr. Vell, flashed across its chest in shifting script. "It's a headache," Jareth said, squinting. "I've had worse." "Probably the altitude change." "Level of pain on a scale of 1 to 11? Vell asked. Jareth hesitated. 6. The tablet blinked red. Vell's eyes widened with alarm. 6? 6 is a Category 3 cerebral distress signal. You may be experiencing a pre-hemorrhagic condition. Have you lost motor function? Any facial drooping? Are you tasting copper?" Jareth raised an eyebrow. "No. I just need ibuprofen." Vell snapped its fingers. 2 more medical personnel arrived, wheeling over a diagnostic bed. One of them, smaller and chartreuse-colored, unrolled what looked like a thermal blanket with blinking sensors. "Please lie down, Subject Boone," Vell instructed, already scanning him with a wand that beeped every half-second. "I'm not lying down," Jareth said, stepping back. "I have a shift in 20 minutes. I'm here to help calibrate the satellite relay network, not to be tucked in like a sick toddler. Vascular pressure in your frontal lobe is elevated by 14%, Vell said. "We must run a full cranio-electrical stimulation analysis." Jareth sighed and opened his duffel bag. He fished around and pulled out a small orange bottle, popped the cap, and dry swallowed 2 tablets. "There," he said. "Painkiller. I'll be fine in 10 minutes. The aliens stared at him. "You just ingested medication without supervision," Vell said, scandalized. "It's ibuprofen," Jareth said. "Over the counter. You can buy it in gas stations." "You self-medicated with an unverified compound?" The chartreuse alien gasped. "It's FDA approved," Jareth said, already walking past them. "FDA," Vell repeated. "Is that a paramilitary unit?" Jareth didn't answer. He had a job to do. The headache was already fading. 30 minutes later, he was in the relay control bay, surrounded by blinking consoles and 3 worried members of the Ferrani delegation, who were debating whether or not to initiate a station-wide lockdown due to the cranial emergency, reported earlier. "Emergency resolved," he muttered, adjusting the frequency stabilizer. "Can everyone please calm down?" "You were in stage 3 cranial distress," hissed Lorik, a silver-scaled Ferrani technician. "That is a high-severity event. You should be in bed under neural compression shielding." "I took a pill," Jareth said. "I'm not going to die." "You're walking." "That's statistically improbable," Lorik said, typing furiously into a console. "We've had 6 Ferrani die from stage 2 cranial stress in the past decade." "Humans have headaches all the time," Jareth said. "It's part of the package. You think I'd miss work every time I got one?" The room went silent. One of the Ferrani engineers whispered something to another. A long moment passed. Lorik turned to him, eyes wide. "You're telling me headaches are common for your species?" "Extremely," Jareth said. "We even have commercials about them." Dr. Vell appeared in the doorway, breathless, holding a large data pad. "I've run the scans. Subject Boone's brain pressure has stabilized. No hemorrhage, no tissue damage. He is functioning." "That's what I said half an hour ago," Jareth muttered. "You must return to the med bay for observation," Vell said. We need to understand how your species resists neural collapse. No offense, Doctor, but I've got 10 relays offline and a solar flare window coming in 6 hours. I don't have time to be poked for science. You may be the key to solving cerebral decompression syndrome, Vel insisted. Jareth rubbed his forehead again. I'll give you a blood sample after I finish my shift. Okay. Vel hesitated. Deal. The next day, Jareth woke up with another headache. Not as bad, just enough to be annoying. He took 2 pills with his morning coffee and reported to the engineering bay. Waiting for him there were 5 aliens, 3 of whom he didn't recognize. What now, he asked. This is Dr. Sen from the Zalari Neurological Institute, Vel said. And Dr. Harrow from the Venery Pain Research Guild. They are here to observe your resilience. Resilience, Harrow repeated, awed. You continue to function despite cranial discomfort? Do you not? Jareth asked. Our species enter catatonia during cranial distress, Harrow said. Our bodies shut down to prevent further damage. Jareth blinked. That's inconvenient. We thought your headache was a life-threatening emergency, Sen said. Your vitals indicated severe distress. But you walked. You worked. I had a deadline, Jareth said. Sen turned to Vel. We must reclassify human pain thresholds. Their tolerance is alarming. Can I just fix the relays now? Jareth asked. They let him work, though he could feel their eyes on him the entire time. By the end of the day, he'd fixed 9 of the 10 relays, only pausing once to sip water and stretch. That evening, he found a message waiting at his quarters. A formal invitation to speak at the Interstellar Medical Symposium on Human Neurological Resilience. He deleted it. 2 days later, during a gravity flux test, one of the station's stabilizers overloaded and exploded. Jareth was on the maintenance catwalk when it happened. The blast threw him into a wall. He landed hard, hearing something pop in his ribs before darkness took him. When he woke up, he was in the medical bay, lungs burning, chest throbbing, and Dr. Vel standing over him. You sustained significant trauma, Vel said. 2 ribs fractured, internal bruising, no cranial involvement. Jareth groaned. That's something. We performed X-ray imaging. Nothing punctured a lung. You'll recover fully in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, he managed. You require rest, Vel said. And supervision. Jareth looked at the ceiling. Tell the relay team I'll write instructions. They can handle the rest. You're not attempting to return to work? Vel asked. I can't move without stabbing pain. I'm not an idiot. Vel glanced at his tablet. Your pain rating is 8. Yeah, Jareth muttered. Welcome to humanity. Vel studied him for a long time. You took a pill for a headache and returned to work. But for this, you rest. Jareth nodded. Headaches are one thing. Broken ribs are another. Vel tilted its head. Fascinating. Over the next few days, Jareth stayed in bed, breathing shallowly, sleeping a lot. Several aliens visited, all wanting to ask the same question. How did you continue to function with cranial distress? He learned to answer politely. Low-grade headaches are manageable. One Zalari researcher asked to scan his brainwaves while he watched boring documentaries. Another tried to simulate migraines in a holographic model and failed. The aliens were baffled. By the time Jareth was able to sit up for longer than 15 minutes, a small paper had been published in the station's science journal, Human Cranial Tolerance and the Implications for Pain Management. He read it, snorted, and went back to sleep. By the end of the 6th week, he was walking again, ribs sore but healed. He took it slow. No heroics. No pills. Just careful movement and patience. He returned to the relay bay and found a bouquet of bright purple flowers on his console. A note attached read, "To our resilient anomaly." Jareth shook his head and got to work. The first thing Jareth noticed when he stepped into the station's hydroponics wing was the smell wet moss, crushed mint, and something sweetly alien, like overripe fruit laced with battery acid. It was unpleasant, but not unbearable. The chamber was warm and damp, with glowing vines wrapped around lattices and translucent fruits pulsating faintly under artificial sunlight. He wasn't here for a farm tour. A tall, angular being with skin like polished obsidian and jointless limbs was waiting near the nutrient tanks, scanning plant data through a projection lens embedded in one eye socket. "You are the human," it said without looking up. "Depends on the day," Jareth replied, stepping carefully between root beds that looked like they'd bite if you got too close. "You told the relay team you needed me. I am Tharkal, head of xenobotany. We requested assistance with the subsoil nutrient regulators. They are failing irregularly." Jareth crouched beside a console half buried in mulch and popped its panel open. A puff of warm mist escaped, carrying the scent of boiled spinach. He coughed once, waved it away, and pulled out a tray of corroded fuses. "These are cooked." "You're lucky the overflow valve didn't rupture." Tharkal finally turned. "Your respiratory reaction suggests contamination. Do you require containment?" "No, I just inhaled a bit of whatever your plants are sweating." He tapped the tray. "You got replacements for these?" Tharkal extended a long arm and unfolded 3 fingers to reveal a pouch. Inside were replacement parts sealed in foil. Jareth took one, slotted it into place, and began replacing the others. "You do not wear filtration," Tharkal observed. "Even the Venery use breath shields in this wing." "I've breathed worse," Jareth said. "Spent 6 months in a Martian algae dome. You don't forget that smell. You endured long-term exposure to Martian biofumes? Without pulmonary collapse. Had a few nosebleeds. Nothing dramatic." Tharkal studied him. "Human thresholds are inconsistent with other oxygen-breathing species. We've cataloged over 40 physical stress responses in visitors. You seem immune." "I'm not immune," Jareth said. "I'm just used to discomfort." He sealed the panel, wiped his hands on his shirt, and stood. "You might want to replace the whole console. If it's cooking fuses this fast, the regulator's pulling too much voltage." "We will consider a full replacement," Tharkal said, then hesitated. "There is something else." "Let me guess," Jareth said. "More fascination with human biology." Tharkal didn't blink. He had no eyelids but paused long enough to make it obvious. "Your recent cranial event continues to circulate in medical briefings. The Pharaoni have proposed a joint study. They believe human reproductive chemistry may suppress neural inflammation." "That's an incredibly weird way to say we think your hormones are magic," Jareth muttered. "They have requested access to tissue samples." "No. Even voluntary follicular donations? What is with you people and hair?" "No." Tharkal didn't press. Instead, he moved toward a thick cluster of red-veined stalks and motioned for Jareth to follow. The ground squelched underfoot. "These plants are reacting poorly to the station's artificial gravity fluctuations. We are attempting to stabilize them through rootbed recalibration, but the support system is analog. Your species' familiarity with such interfaces may be beneficial." "You mean it's old?" Jareth said, crouching beside the control rods. "How old?" 75 galactic cycles." He snorted. "This is older than half the junk in the Smithsonian." Jareth touched the manual override. The panel groaned but opened. Inside were rusted levers and what looked like a hand crank. "You've been adjusting this manually?" "We attempted automation. The plants rejected it." "That's not ominous." "They secreted acid into the new wiring." He stared at the stalks. One of them twitched unnervingly. "Okay, I'll recalibrate the bracket tension," he said, pulling out a small wrench. "But I'm not shaking hands with anything." The adjustment took 20 minutes. By the end, Jareth's knuckles were scraped and his shirt soaked with condensation. "Done," he said, leaning back. "Give it a few hours. If the plants don't spit acid again, you're golden." Tharkal inclined his head. "You endured exposure to corrosive humidity, unfiltered spores, and expired wiring. This is documented as hazardous even for protected species." "I'm not fragile," Jareth said. "I'm just stubborn." He turned to leave but stopped when he spotted a small collection of objects on a nearby bench: glass vials, spindly utensils, and a sealed container labeled in a language he couldn't read. What's that? Specimens from the Bryathel system. Highly reactive. We are testing their response to human pheromones. Jareth raised a brow. You're growing plants that react to people's sweat? Not sweat, Tharkle said. Emotional emissions. That's worse. The obsidian-skinned alien extended a vial. Inside was a pale blue seed, pulsing faintly. This one activated when exposed to a recording of human laughter. Why? We do not know. It bloomed and then emitted a scent that triggered euphoria in 3 observers. One passed out. Jareth stepped back. Okay then. I think I've done enough gardening for one day. As he left the hydroponics wing, the corridor lights flickered briefly, followed by a low hum that vibrated through the floor. Jareth paused, frowned, and tapped his comm. Engineering, he said. You getting tremors? A voice crackled through. Minor power oscillations. We're checking the core dampeners. He sighed. I'll swing by. He was halfway there when the floor jerked sideways. Nothing dramatic, just a sudden lurch, like the station had hiccuped. He grabbed a wall rail to steady himself. Engineering, that felt bigger than minor. Shield alignment drifted. Gravity shells compensating. No breach. Jareth changed direction. The alignment controls were closer. He entered the maintenance chamber and found a pair of Venery technicians crouched beside a flickering console. Their elongated limbs moved quickly, but their eyes were wide. The field anchor is destabilizing, one said, not looking up. We've isolated the feedback but lack manual override training. Jareth crouched beside them and scanned the display. The anchor's oscillation was increasing too fast. You're routing power through a bypass that's throttling itself, he said, tapping at the panel. It's overheating the node. We cannot disengage it. The system is locked. That's because you're trying to override it digitally. This thing's so old you have to do it with tools. He grabbed a torque wrench from the wall and ducked under the panel. The metal was hot. He worked quickly, hands moving through the cramped space with practiced ease. Pressure stabilizing, one of the Venery said. Give it 10 seconds, Jareth muttered, sweat dripping from his hairline. There. It's rerouted. The hum stopped abruptly. The floor stilled. He pulled himself out and stretched his aching back. You recalibrated the anchor manually, the second technician said, with no protective rig. I've got good instincts, Jareth said. That system is rated for emergency use only. Even our engineers avoid it. Then you're lucky I'm stubborn and slightly reckless. He left them speechless and headed back toward his quarters. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with Dr. Vell. You are difficult to locate, the alien said. Not hiding. Just busy. You have been in hydroponics and power stabilization within the same cycle. Didn't plan it that way. Vell studied him. We are expanding the study. Your actions are being reviewed for behavioral analysis. Great. I'm a medical curiosity and now a case study. We are not mocking you, Vell said. We are attempting to understand how you endure. Jareth rubbed the bridge of his nose. It's not about endurance. It's necessity. Things break. You fix them. Most species delegate. Maybe they don't have to grow up fixing junk with duct tape and crossed fingers. Vell tilted his head. You are not an anomaly. There are more like you. Plenty. Then your species is more dangerous than we anticipated. Only to malfunctioning hardware. Vell didn't laugh, but something in his posture shifted an almost imperceptible lean forward. Your next evaluation is scheduled in 3 days, he said. I will request additional observers. Jareth sighed. As long as I don't have to sit still for it. Vell nodded and walked away. Jareth turned and kept moving, already dreading what else might fall apart before the week was over. Jareth Boone was elbow-deep in coolant sludge when the emergency intercom blared again. He groaned, yanked his arm free with a wet squelch, and wiped the gray-green gunk off his fingers using the only clean spot left on his coveralls, the underside of his right pant leg. The console beside him flickered, still overheating. He'd been working nonstop for nearly 2 local cycles straight, minus a brief nap wedged under a fan duct and a nutrition bar that tasted like mint-flavored dirt. The voice on the intercom was speaking fast, clipped, and unfamiliar. "Human technician Boone, your presence is requested in environmental systems. Immediate assistance required." He pushed himself upright. "What now?" The console didn't answer. It never did. He grabbed his toolkit, shook the worst of the sludge from his boots, and jogged toward the lift. It stuttered as it descended, the walls vibrating in a slow, grumbling rhythm. Environmental Systems was 3 decks down and built like a bunker, thick walls, pressure doors, and a faint, ever-present hum, like the station itself was exhaling. The air was cooler here, tinged with the scent of sterilized metal and something vaguely citrus. 3 aliens were waiting by the control panel. None of them were familiar. The one closest to the wall had a curved spine and a translucent carapace that shimmered under the overhead lights. It was tapping a long, jointless digit against a display covered in warning glyphs. "You are Boone," it said without turning. "Still am," Jareth replied, setting down his kit. "What's the problem?" "Atmospheric balance is failing in Section 12. Oxygen density is dropping, nitrogen levels are erratic. Auto-balance protocols are unresponsive. Manual override? Interfaces are locked due to cross-system conflict. We suspect corrupted input from the humidity regulation node." Jareth crouched to access the lower panel. "What's Section 12 used for?" "Quarantine storage. Inert samples. Non-volatiles." He paused. "That's not reassuring. They are not dangerous in current form. But they must remain sealed. Right? Let's make sure they stay that way." The hatch popped open with a hiss. Inside, the wiring was a mess: scorched connectors, looped cables that clearly weren't part of the original design, and a blinking diagnostic chip that had been wedged between 2 structural beams with what looked like hardened resin. "Who installed this?" he asked, pointing. "Previous Ferrani contractors. They said it was a temporary bypass." He snorted. "I've said the same thing about half the things in my apartment." "Doesn't make it true." He wedged his hand into the tight space and began loosening the chip. It snapped free with a crackle of static, and the warning lights immediately shifted from red to amber. Systems recognizing the override block. "Give it a second." The lights blinked again, then stabilized. One of the aliens leaned closer. Its face was a smooth, featureless oval, but the tilt of its head suggested disbelief. "You removed a critical control unit with your bare hand." "It was blocking the failsafe relay. That unit was insulated against high-voltage backflow." "I noticed. That's why I used my left hand." The translucent one stepped forward. "You risked neural shock." "I've had worse," Jareth muttered, inspecting the wires for melt damage. "Woke up once with my arm under a heat coil. Took me 2 weeks to get the smell out of my skin." The alien stared. "Is that normal for you?" one asked. "Not ideal," Jareth said, "but not unusual." The system gave a soft chime. The panel readout shifted, oxygen levels climbing, nitrogen stabilizing. "Balance restored," the translucent one said. "Containment integrity holding." Jareth stretched his back. "You're lucky nothing flammable was stored in there. That chip was arcing. We were prepared to evacuate that quadrant." He rubbed his hands on a rag. "Next time, call me before the emergency." They didn't respond. A moment later, the station's overhead lights dimmed, then returned to normal brightness. "That's the second time today," he said. "Pulse fluctuation? Power grid instability. We've informed Central Systems." He gave them a long look. "You're not going to ask for a blood sample, are you?" "No," the translucent one said. "But we did log your biometric readings during the repair." "Of course you did." He collected his tools, slung the kit over his shoulder, and walked out. By the time he made it back to his quarters, the fatigue had caught up. His fingers tingled from the voltage exposure, and his knees ached with every step. He stripped off the coveralls, peeled his undershirt from his back, and stood under the lukewarm shower for 3 full minutes before remembering to breathe. He collapsed onto the bunk without drying off. The next cycle began with a summons from the station's Joint Operations Committee, delivered via a blinking icon on his wall terminal. He squinted at it, then sighed, rolled off the bunk, and got dressed. The meeting room was brighter than necessary, with a curved table surrounded by 12 seats, only one of which was sized for a human. The rest were occupied by representatives from various species, some with skin like dried bark, others with glowing pupils, one that seemed to exist as a shifting cloud inside a containment frame. The committee chair, a pale-skinned being with vertical ridges along its neck, gestured toward the open seat. "You have been observed across multiple sectors," it began, "executing repairs, stabilizing infrastructure, and undertaking high-risk manual interventions. You make it sound like I broke things just to fix them," Jareth said, sitting. "You've been exposed to electromagnetic discharge, corrosive atmospheres, and suboptimal oxygen saturation, all within one local week. Not by choice. The Venery delegation believes your physiology offers a model for adaptive resilience. The Pharaoni have proposed a cooperative training program based on your techniques." Jareth leaned back. "You want me to teach aliens how to crawl into malfunctioning pipes and get minor burns? We want to learn how you survive doing so." Another representative spoke up, its voice vibrating through a chest plate. "Your actions have prevented 3 system-wide failures, yet you continue to operate without formal medical clearance. I'm not injured. Your biometric logs suggest chronic fatigue. That's called having a job." There was a pause. Then the bark-skinned delegate spoke. "We propose formal recognition, a designation of functional anomaly. This status would exempt you from standard response protocols and permit continued field engagement under your own discretion. You're offering me a license to do what I've already been doing?" "Correct. With one addition. You will report your methods, document your decisions. We will observe, not interfere." Jareth rubbed his jaw. "No blood samples? Voluntary only." He considered it. "Fine, but I'm not writing reports in triplicate." "Agreed." The meeting ended without ceremony. 2 days later, Jareth was in the waste reclamation ducts, replacing a failed pressure valve. The air was thick with ammonia and recycled humidity, and the panel frame was warped from thermal stress. He wedged a wrench into the bracket and twisted. The valve snapped into place with a satisfying click. The hiss of escaping pressure died down. He emerged from the hatch, grime streaked across his arms, and found a small group of trainees waiting 3 species he didn't recognize, each of them holding datapads. "You're here to observe?" They nodded. "All right," he said, tossing the wrench into his kit. "Lesson 1. Never trust a system labeled self-regulating. They lie." They followed him without hesitation, scribbling notes. He walked on, already planning the next repair. For the first time in weeks, no alarms sounded. No systems failed. The station held steady. And for the first time, Jareth didn't feel like the only one holding it together.